Sunday, 21st August 2022. Just after 12:30 a.m., the quiet of Leinster Road in Old Swan was broken. A white Volkswagen T-Roc sat outside number 40. Inside the house, 28-year-old Ashley Dale was alone with her dog, unaware of what was about to happen. Meanwhile, a car rolled to a stop further down the street. Two men stepped out. They weren't there for her. They were there for her boyfriend. Within minutes, a young woman who had nothing to do with the feud would be lying fatally wounded in her own backyard. This is the story of Ashley Dale and how a drug war she never chose claimed her life. Ashley Dale was 28 years old, living a life far removed from the violence that would ultimately claim it. Born in Liverpool, she grew up surrounded by family, with a reputation for being kind, loyal, and ambitious. Friends described her as the type of person who lit up every room, someone who balanced a love for her career with the simple joy of time spent with her dog and her close circle of friends. She worked as an environmental health officer for Knowsley Council, a job she loved and excelled at. Colleagues remembered her as professional, determined, and always cheerful, even in the face of tough assignments. She had spent years working her way into this role, earning respect for her ability to handle every task. Beyond work, Ashley had dreams of traveling as well. Ashley's relationship with Lee Harrison, a former youth footballer turned figure in Liverpool's underground circles, brought her closer to a world she never wanted to be part of. While she remained uninvolved, Lee's connections to organised crime made him a target. We will talk about it in a few minutes. In the days before her death, she was making ordinary plans and posting photos of her dog on social media, unaware of the danger circling around her. Family members later described her as a girl who had everything ahead of her, with a bright future and a heart that cared for everyone. But on a quiet August evening, all of that ended, not because she was the target, but because she was in the wrong place, linked to the wrong man. Lee Harrison was at the center of a violent and deeply personal feud that ultimately cost Ashley Dale her life. Harrison, Ashley's long-term partner, was no stranger to Merseyside's criminal underworld. He was linked to a street-level drugs network and known to operate on the edges of larger organised gangs in Liverpool. But it was his connection to the Hillsiders' organised crime group that set him on a collision course with Niall Barry. The roots of their feud stretched back at least 3 years before the murder, when a dispute over stolen drugs fractured their relationship. Prosecutors later told the court that Harrison had previously been close to Barry, but when Barry's drugs were stolen, Harrison sided with the Hillsiders instead of backing Barry's crew. This act of betrayal marked the beginning of a bitter conflict. The tension between them reignited in June 2022 at the Glastonbury Festival. Both men were present with their respective groups, and the night ended in violence. The assault on Barry's associate Sean Zeiss by Jordan Thompson, a close friend of Harrison, was described by prosecutors as the tipping point that escalated the feud. By July 2022, the threats became explicit. Messages and voice notes later recovered by police showed that Barry had directly threatened Harrison, saying he would come down to the estate and punch his head in. Ashley herself recorded voice notes to friends, describing how Barry was on some pure rampage and how both she and Harrison were living in constant fear. She admitted she was constantly looking over her shoulder, aware that Barry's crew was watching their every move. It was Barry's orders that set in motion the events that led to Ashley's murder. She was never the intended target. The prosecution would later argue that Barry was the ringleader of an organised crime plot to kill Harrison, blaming him for the Glastonbury assault and seeing him as a direct challenge to his drug business. The men responsible for Ashley Dale's death were not random attackers. They were part of a tightly organised network, bound by loyalty to Niall Barry and united by a violent mission: to find and kill Lee Harrison. Each played a role, from planning and logistics to the moment of the shooting. Niall Barry was the ringleader, and also known by his nickname Branch. He was the one who pulled the strings. By his mid-20s, Barry was heavily involved in Liverpool's drug trade, with connections to serious organised crime groups, Barry's feud with Lee Harrison dates back years, which we have discussed already. The Crown Prosecution Service described Barry as the one dispatching foot soldiers to carry out his plans, all while keeping himself in the shadows. He was determined to make Harrison pay, and Ashley's home on Linster Road became the chosen point of attack. At the heart of the attack was James Witham, a 41-year-old with a reputation for violence and connections to Barry's crew. On the night of 21st August 2022, Witham kicked down Ashley's front door, armed with a Scorpion submachine gun. Prosecutors revealed how he fired multiple rounds through the hallway, striking Ashley as she tried to flee. Witham later claimed in court that he did not intend to kill her, that the attack was meant as a warning for Harrison. But forensic evidence left no doubt of his role. His DNA was found on a bullet casing, and a distinctive footprint from his trainers was recovered from the scene. CCTV showed him hours earlier casually buying alcohol, smiling with peers, behavior that underlined his calmness before the violence. Joseph Pears, 29, was the driver of the Getaway car, a stolen Hyundai i30N that transported Witham to and from the scene. Once considered a promising amateur boxer, Pears had drifted into criminal circles, eventually becoming part of Barry's close network. During the trial, he denied all involvement, insisting he was at home watching the Anthony Joshua fight in his pajamas. But phone data, automatic number plate recognition cameras, and CCTV footage placed the Hyundai in motion on the night of the murder. Prosecutors painted him as the man who knew every move of that car, making him as vital to the plan as the shooter himself. Sean Zeiss, 28, was Barry's right-hand man and played a crucial role in the background of the plot. He had personal reasons to hate Harrison's circle. His ex-girlfriend, Olivia McDowell, had been spotted with Jordan Thompson at Glastonbury, sparking a fight that led to his humiliation. In the weeks that followed, Zeiss was heavily involved in the planning stages, staying at the Pilch Lane flat where the gang met to finalize their moves. Last but not least was Ian Fitzgibbon, another close associate. His role was described as overseeing logistics, ensuring everything, from cars to weapons, was in place. Days after the shooting, Fitzgibbon fled to Dubai in a bid to escape justice. He was later extradited back to the UK to face trial. Prosecutors placed him in the Pilch Lane flat during the planning meetings, though like Zeiss, he denied having any part in the attack. Each of these men played a part in a plan that was meant for Harrison, but when they struck, Harrison was not there. And by then, there was no turning back. On 25th of June 2022, 2 months before Ashley's murder, James Witham and Niall Barry were on their way to Glastonbury Festival. The taxi they were travelling in was pulled over by Avon and Somerset police. Body-worn cameras captured the moment officers opened the boot and found a black holdall. Inside was a flick knife and a passport bearing the name Niall Warner, Barry's father's surname. Barry insisted the bag wasn't his, claiming the bag belonged to Witham. However, Witham admitted the bag was his. Police later found ketamine inside, though he denied any intent to possess the drug. It was a small incident at the time, a roadside arrest that barely raised suspicion beyond the immediate offense. Yet, in hindsight, it offered a glimpse of what was coming. By the summer of 2022, the Pilch Lane flat had become the hub of Barry's network. Prosecutors later described it as the center of operations where the gang coordinated the attack. Detectives later pieced together how Barry and his crew gathered here in the weeks before Ashley's murder. CCTV and phone data linked the flat to the group's movements, reinforcing its role as the key planning site. Prosecutors placed Zeiss and Fitzgibbon at the Pilch Lane flat during planning meetings. Inside the flat, the conversations were focused on Lee Harrison. Messages recovered from encrypted devices showed Barry orchestrating the plot, issuing instructions about weapons, routes, and timing. Prosecutors later described Pilch Lane as the war room, where every detail of the ambush was refined. By the time August came, the plan was set. The flat that looked so ordinary had become the launchpad for a murder. It was late on the 20th of August, 2022, a quiet Saturday night in Old Swan, Liverpool. Inside her home on Linster Road, Ashley Dale was winding down. The TV flickered softly in the background. Her dachshund, Darla, lay curled against her, a small comfort in the stillness of the evening. At 11:40 p.m, the calm broke. Her car alarm sounded. One of her tires had been slashed. Ashley sent a quick message to her mum, brushing it off. Maybe it was just the rain, nothing serious. Minutes later, at 11:51 p.m, she took a photo with Darla, the kind of everyday picture she often sent to friends. The dog looked uneasy. Neither of them could have known it would be the last photo she'd ever take. Outside, a stolen Hyundai 30N was moving through the dark streets. James Witham and Joseph Peers were inside, searching for Lee Harrison, Ashley's partner, and the man Barry's crew wanted dead. Harrison wasn't there that night. At 12:07 a.m, Ashley replied to a message from Harrison with a casual line. Hours earlier, it would have been nothing more than a joke. Now, it feels like a shadow of what was to come. By 12:30 a.m, the Hyundai stopped outside. Witham stepped out wearing gloves, a Scorpion submachine gun in his hand. He kicked through the front door and unleashed 10 rounds into the hallway. Ashley ran. She made it through the dining room towards the back garden, but unfortunately a bullet struck her in the abdomen. She dropped her phone and keys as she collapsed outside. Neighbors called the police, reporting the sound of gunfire. The first officers on the scene found a trail of bullet casings. She was found in the back garden and died shortly after emergency services arrived. Forensics later confirmed every round had been fired from Witham's weapon. His DNA was found on a casing. A single footprint from his trainer remained on the hallway floor, a silent witness to the night's violence. When the first officers arrived at Linster Road in the early hours of August 21st, 2022, the scene was chaotic. What followed was one of Merseyside Police's largest and most complex murder investigations in recent years. Detectives from the crime unit immediately locked down the area. Roads around Old Swan were sealed, and a fingertip search of Linster Road began as crime scene officers moved in with forensic kits to document every inch of the house. The Scorpion submachine gun used in the attack left clear ballistic evidence. 10 9mm casings were recovered from the hallway and dining area. Each casing bore unique marks that matched Witham's weapon when it was later found and tested. Investigators also lifted a distinctive footprint from a pair of on-cloud trainers pressed into the dust of the hallway floor. This would later be matched to a pair owned by James Witham, forming one of the key links to the gunman. That, combined with the CCTV evidence, including footage of Witham and Peers buying alcohol just hours before the attack, the case against them began to solidify. As part of the inquiry, officers also tried to question Lee Harrison about the threats and ongoing feud with Niall Barry. Harrison gave no useful information, refusing to cooperate with detectives, a silence that complicated the early stages of the investigation and forced police to rely more heavily on forensic and digital evidence. Ashley's mobile phone was another breakthrough. Though she had dropped it during her escape attempt, it was intact, containing a series of voice notes and messages she had sent to friends in the weeks before the shooting. These revealed her growing fear of Niall Barry and the threats aimed at Lee Harrison. One voice note spoke of Barry being on some pure rampage, confirming that Ashley knew violence was coming, though she never imagined it would reach her door. ANPR cameras provided the next major lead. We will talk about it later. By early September 2022, the net was closing. Every digital footprint, every forensic trace, and every intercepted message began pointing back to Niall Barry's crew and to the Pilch Lane flat where the plan had been set in motion. The Hyundai i30N was the silent accomplice to Ashley Dale's murder. Sleek, fast, and stolen weeks before the attack. Investigators later traced the car's origins to a theft in Liverpool earlier that summer. In the days leading up to the 20th of August 2022, The Hyundai i30N was seen multiple times on ANPR cameras and residential CCTV across Merseyside. Detectives later pieced together its movements: short trips to Pilch Lane, test runs through Old Swan, and late-night drives that suggested the gang were rehearsing their approach. Every route was mapped, every escape road considered. On the night of the murder, the Hyundai was driven by Joseph Pearce. Data from Pearce's phone placed him on the move between 11 p.m. and 12:30 a.m., matching the Hyundai's journey. After the shooting, the Hyundai sped away from Leinster Road. ANPR cameras tracked it, leaving Old Swan and heading towards Wiston. It was eventually discovered on the 9th of October 2022 during an unrelated domestic incident in St. Helens. The Hyundai i30N Performance was found parked on the driveway of a house on Waring Avenue. Although not hidden or disguised, it had been stored there by Callum Radford, who was accused of assisting Joseph Pearce in concealing the car. PC Sam Ward, the officer who found it, recognized the vehicle from police briefings linked to the murder investigation. This car became one of the strongest pieces of evidence during the trial. The Crown Prosecution Service highlighted how Pearce, as the driver, played a role just as crucial as the gunman. Without him, Witham would never have reached Ashley's door. The Hyundai's journey, captured step by step by cameras across Liverpool, told the story of a calculated and coordinated attack. In the days after the murder, her parents, Julie and Steve Dunn, were left heartbroken. They spoke of Ashley as a young woman who had everything ahead of her: a successful career, close friendships, and dreams of a future she never got to see. Julie described her daughter as beautiful, caring, and the life of every room, while Steve said it felt like his world had stopped the moment he got the call from police. Flowers, photographs, and candles were left outside her home on Leinster Road in the days that followed. Her funeral, held in September 2022 at St. Matthew's Church in Liverpool, drew hundreds of mourners. Ashley's coffin was adorned with flowers, and photographs of her with her dog Darla were displayed alongside heartfelt messages. By late 2022, all 5 men, Niall Barry, James Witham, Joseph Pearce, Sean Zeiss, and Ian Fitzgibbon, were arrested in coordinated operations. Niall Barry was the first major arrest. On 24th August 2022, just 3 days after the shooting, officers raided Formby Hall Golf Resort and Spa. Barry had checked in under his own name, carrying over £10,000 in cash stuffed into a Nike holdall. Detectives would later reveal he had been arranging to leave the country with the help of a fixer known as Gus, using false documents. He was taken away in handcuffs before the plan could begin. James Witham and Joseph Pearce had also tried to stay ahead of the investigation. On the night of the murder, CCTV captured them checking into the Mercure Hotel in St. Helens, where they stayed until just hours before the attack. In the weeks that followed, they moved north to Scotland, hiding in plain sight. But a vehicle stop by Cumbria Police on 13th September 2022 ended the run. Sean Zeiss, aware the net was tightening, walked into a police station on the 30th of August 2022 and surrendered himself. Ian Fitzgibbon took a different route, boarding a flight from Birmingham to Dubai the day after the shooting. He remained there for months before being tracked down in Spain, where he was extradited back to the UK to face trial. 21st February 2025. Liverpool Crown Court. The courtroom was silent as the judge prepared to deliver his final words. 2 trials, one for Ashley Dale's murder, another for Lee Harrison's drug offences, had laid bare the web of violence and crime that linked everyone involved. The prosecution painted a clear picture of how Niall Barry's network had orchestrated Ashley's murder. We have already discussed in depth each member's defence also laid out in the killer's profile, so I will not go into those details again. In a separate hearing, Lee Harrison stood in the dock for his own crimes. Though not involved in Ashley's murder, he had been running a drug line across Merseyside. His barrister spoke of his struggles, losing work, becoming homeless, battling mental health issues, and argued that his involvement was minor compared to those who had killed his girlfriend. But the judge was clear. Harrison had been making money off other people's misery. When it came to sentencing, the weight of the courtroom shifted. The first to be dealt with was Niall Barry. At just 26 years old, he was handed life imprisonment with a minimum term of 47 years, the harshest sentence of them all. After that came James Witham. At 41, the gunman was sentenced to life with a minimum term of 43 years. Then it was Joseph Pearce. The 29-year-old was given life with a minimum of 41 years. Finally, the judge turned to Sean Zeiss. The 28-year-old was jailed for life with a minimum term of 42 years. Each of them would spend decades behind bars before they could even ask for freedom. As for Ian Fitzgibbon, his fate took a different turn. He was acquitted of any involvement in Ashley Dale's murder, walking free from that charge. But freedom didn't last long. Police had already built a separate case against him, one tied to EncroChat messages and a large-scale cocaine and heroin conspiracy. In July 2024, Fitzgibbon was sentenced to 14.5 years in prison for his role in that operation. As for Callum Radford, 26, of Trentham Road, Kirkby, he was also acquitted by the jury. The court heard claims that he had been paid £100 to park the car on a friend's driveway in St Helens, but the evidence wasn't enough to secure a conviction. Unlike the others, Radford left Liverpool Crown Court without a sentence. The sentences closed a dark chapter, a network dismantled, lives lost and ruined. But for Ashley's family, no sentence would ever be enough. What do you think about this case and the sentences handed down? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more true UK crime stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. There's always another case to uncover.